Hi, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to Wonder Snatch. Alopecia's in the news because of a sudden slap. So it's time for another Dermatology in Drag, where I talk about Alopecia Areata, one of my favorite conditions, okay? And instead of doing a, alopecia look, which I think will get me in a lot of trouble, I'm going to do another pastel polka dot clown look, which I've been working on for a while, all right? So if that's something you want to see, don't forget to give me a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel and ring that bell for post notifications, all right? All right, let's get started on Alopecia Areata. Alright, got rid of them brows, okay, and now I'm going to paint my whole face white, okay, for this clownish look. So remember, for a really good white base, if you've used any of your white before for anything else, you gotta wipe off the residue of past looks. See? I don't know if you can see, but that's like skin tone stuff. So get rid of it all. Harsha today. Okay, so Alopecia Areata. Before we go into what it is, let's just recap what it's not. Okay, if you go and Google celebrities with alopecia areata, you get a whole bunch of listing celebrities with alopecia and lumping everything together. So not all alopecias are the same, okay? Alopecia areata is an autoimmune form of hair loss where your own immune system is attacking your hair follicles. Okay, this is not the same as androgenetic alopecia, which is male or female pattern hair loss, which lots of people have also. And it's also not the stress-related hair loss, which is telogen effluvium, which is what people get after they get pregnant, when they get very stressed or something. So there are these lists saying like Tara Banks had like stress-induced hair loss. It's probably like telogen effluvium. There's some celebrities who say they had hair loss after some certain hair care practices. This is things like traction alopecia, or even some forms of scarring alopecia where you use a lot of heat tools. These are not alopecia areata. Alopecia areata is a very distinct condition, okay, where your immune cells are actually attacking your hair follicles. There's still quite a lot unknown about this condition, okay, and the treatments are just about getting there, okay, we'll talk about that later. But the underlying thing is that your T cells, your T lymphocytes, okay, are actually attacking your hair follicles. There are probably like genetic and environmental factors that contribute to alopecia areata. All right, and alopecia areata, strangely, only attacks the growing hair follicles. So if you remember my previous videos about hair, most of the hairs in your head are in what we call anagen, or this growth phase, and these are the hair follicles that are preferentially attacked by alopecia areata. Maybe it's because these follicles are currently producing a lot of new protein, okay, to make the hair shaft, to make the color, the melanin that pigments the hair shaft, and these are potential candidates for the target of the autoimmune attack. And it's quite interesting that when you get alopecia areata, it's mainly the pigmented hairs that are lost first, okay? So if you hear stories about people whose hair turned white overnight because of stress, okay, sometimes that's because alopecia areata, which is sometimes associated with stress also. I mean, I know I said it's not just stress, but stress can trigger alopecia areata as well. Okay, all the dark hairs actually fall out, leaving the white hair. So Marie Antoinette famously was thought to have alopecia areata because the day before her head was cut off, she was so stressed that her hair completely turned white. Okay, and that's because maybe all her black hairs fell out because of the stress. Although this Marie Antoinette syndrome is probably one of the more dramatic presentations of alopecia areata, most people experience just small round patches, okay, of hair loss. And these patches are really quite smooth and quite round, okay, quite perfectly round. They're not bizarre shaped or anything. This might be because, the hairs in that patch are in the same phase of growth, but we really don't know why. Sometimes alopecia areata appears in these perfectly round circles. Okay, sometimes these can coalesce to affect the whole scalp, okay, and that can be very devastating and disfiguring. Okay, and in some severe cases, it also starts to involve the hairs in the rest of the body as well, such as the eyebrows, the eyelashes, the pubic hair, the armpit hair, okay, and that's when it's called alopecia universalis. There are other patterns that are quite interesting, okay, there's this ophiasis pattern of alopecia areata, where it's only the back of the head that's affected, okay, and these patients tend to be a little bit harder to treat. We don't know what it is about the hairs on the back of the head, but they are very different from the hairs on the rest of the scalp. Okay, white base. And now, from this white base, I'm going to go in with little round circles, okay, reminiscent of alopecia. When I first started to do this Dermatology in Drag series, I wanted to do a whole series on hair loss and style wigs to represent those kind of hairs, but I think that was a pretty bad idea, okay? I got a bit of a taste of that when I did my vitiligo series and tried to do a hungry look and really got dragged on Twitter for that. So, no more tributes to dermatological conditions, okay? So today is going to be a more abstract kind of representation of alopecia areata. Okay, I've got my Athena palette and I'm going to go in with some of these pastel colors and just do these dots all over my face and intensify them with powders later. Okay, so first the yellow. Let's move on to orange. This fits perfectly in there. Alopecia areata is actually quite a common condition, okay? It's estimated about 2% of people all around the world get alopecia areata at some point in their life. Most autoimmune conditions affect women more, but some reports actually report that alopecia areata actually affects both sexes the same. Okay, so it's quite egalitarian. Okay, I'm going to go in with my white again, and I'm going to just cut this so it looks more like a contour. All right, and go in and cut that lid too. Race-wise, although a lot of different societies have estimated the incidence of alopecia areata to be around 2%, it does seem to affect, people with darker hairs more, okay? Maybe because it's the pigmented hairs that are more likely to be affected, okay? So, of course, women of color are thought to be affected more by this condition, okay? And it can be quite devastating. There are some genes that have been associated with alopecia areata, okay? Definitely with this set of genes called the HLA, or the human leukocyte antigen. Okay, these are immune genes which kind of teach your immune system how to recognize the world around you. So different people with different combinations of these HLA genes are actually sensitive to different kinds of autoimmune conditions, and this is very interesting. Some other genes that are involved include those that code for what we call danger signals, okay? And danger signals are actually this pathway which alerts the immune system to certain types of, insults like virus infections and stuff like that. And it is thought that the hair follicles in your head have this, what we call immune privilege. They actually suppress certain danger signals so that they're protected from the immune cells normally, okay? And when this breaks down, the immune cells are free to attack your hair follicles. So that's a very interesting kind of pathway for alopecia areata. Okay, and some of these studies were actually done in the lab that I did my PhD in. Okay, I'll link some of the links down below if you're interested. Okay, so I've got this kind of base down. I'm just going to powder it all with white now. All right, so I'm just going to powder this really quickly. I'll be right back. All right, so now I'm just adding some pink, okay, to the contour areas. Okay, I'm going to deepen this up with some purples later. So alopecia areata, as I mentioned, it is associated with some other conditions as well, okay? Such as atopy, okay, which is allergies like asthma and eczema, okay, and other autoimmune conditions like vitiligo or even autoimmune thyroid disease. It is also potentially psychologically damaging, okay? A recent study actually showed that people with alopecia areata actually do have quite high incidences of depression and anxiety. So it's very important to treat this kind of hair loss very seriously. And now I'm just going to go in and intensify the crease with all the different colors. Blue into purple. So when patients do present with alopecia areata, they present at all different stages, okay? Sometimes they don't even notice that they have alopecia areata, okay? It's their hairdresser or their beauty salon who kind of like notices they've got this bald patch at the back of the head, and they come maybe 6 months after that, okay? Most of the time, okay, 80% of the time, some of these really small patches actually grow back themselves. But it can take quite a long time. So sometimes treatment is definitely necessary. I'm using the Michaela Glam Light palette. Okay, these are really intense pastel colors. So the easiest treatment for alopecia areata is intralesional corticosteroids, where we actually inject steroids into these bald patches to suppress the immune system to get the hairs to grow back. And this usually works for most people. Of course, these injections are not very practical once you have like many bald patches, or if your entire head is affected, okay? So all these injections can be quite painful, okay? So in these cases, if it's very rapidly progressing, we might need to give you oral steroids, okay, for a few weeks. Or we can do what we call immunotherapy, okay? Immunotherapy is a very interesting form of treatment whereby you actually apply a medicine such as difencyprone or SADB, which is squaric acid dibutyl ester, okay, which causes a bit of an itch to the scalp. And this actually leads to a kind of a slowing down of the autoimmune attack, okay, because these kind of immune reactions are kind of like counterproductive, okay? They cancel each other out. I'm gonna put a little bit of green. Okay, so I'm gonna look really quite crazy. Let's get these face shapes on, give myself some shape. Okay, so topical immunotherapy, it does work. We don't really know how, okay? It does take quite a while for it to work. So sometimes patients need to get these treatments like once a week for up to 6 months and sometimes even up to a year to get the hair to grow back. But at least it doesn't, use quite a lot of steroids for that. Some centers in the world, some places actually use light therapy, okay, UV light to suppress the immune system. It kind of works. This is an effective treatment for things like eczema and psoriasis, and in patients who don't respond to injections or topical immunotherapy, sometimes we do use what we call psoralen, UVA, where we actually apply a sensitizing agent and shine UV light to see whether that helps. And if all that fails, then there's always oral medication as well. You deepen the crease a little bit. This goes into a deeper purple. So I'm really going through all the different colors. Get that crease there. Okay, so oral medications for alopecia areata include things like methotrexate and cyclosporin. These are very strong immunosuppressants, which can help to treat alopecia areata, okay, but the recurrence rate after stopping the medication is quite high. Okay, there are some new medications on the horizon called JAK inhibitors, which seem to work very, very well for alopecia areata. In fact, in a very recent meeting of the American Academy of Dermatology, this drug called baricitinib was shown to be super effective, okay, over 3 years to help to promote hair regrowth in alopecia areata. So these are very new treatments that are very promising for this condition. And I'm pretty sure Jada Pinkett-Smith is probably on some of them. Okay, now let's go back in and cut that crease one more time. All right, and set that all with Sugar Pill Taco. I'm gonna draw on my liner. All right, so sketch up my liner. I'm just gonna fill that in with black right now, and I'll be right back. Whew. I'm back. Okay, almost went overboard there. Looks a little bit messy, but hopefully it'll all pull together with the outfit and everything. Okay, this is giving me a bit of Hogacio Crujentie vibes, okay? So I think I'm going to give myself a really asymmetrical, crazy lip to go along with all this. Okay, and where was I? I was talking about treatments for alopecia areata. So, we're talking about JAK inhibitors. There are other treatments that seem to be quite promising. One of them, I think I mentioned in one of my follicle follies, was fecal transplants, okay? There seems to be some sort of link between the microbiome, all the bacteria that's living in your gut and your immune system, and they somehow train your immune system to, behave. And, a fecal transplant where they change your entire microbiome has been shown to reverse AA in some patients. So, that's something that's on the horizon and maybe something that is quite interesting, that we might be able to modulate our immune system with maybe our diet, probiotics or something, but we really don't know how it works at the moment, and we really need to, put more research into that. And of course, when all else fails, there's always camouflage, like wigs. I love wigs. Jada Pinkett-Smith is welcome to any of my wigs. And speaking of wigs and hairstyles, I personally didn't think that Chris Rock's G.I. Jane comment was that much of an insult. In fact, I think neither did Will Smith until he saw Jada Pinkett-Smith's reaction, and I think there's really some, history there. I don't think Jada Pinkett-Smith likes Chris Rock very much. I mean, he made all those comments about her all those years ago, so it's probably all built up from that. She did herself say, when she came out with this alopecia thing, that she can only laugh about this at some point. So she was already trying to make a joke about it. So,
Now at this point I can only laugh. Now this is going to be a little bit more difficult for me to hide. So I thought I'd just share it so y'all not asking any questions.
I really don't think alopecia was really the reason why that altercation happened. I'm gonna fill in that with red, I guess. As I said, I was looking for celebrities who had alopecia. There's not many out there, okay? It seems to be still quite a lot of stigma about alopecia. People talk about stress-induced alopecia and everything, but quite a few have alopecia areata. There is this doctor online, okay, on YouTube called Gary Linkoff. He has alopecia areata, and he actually exposed Jada Pinkett-Smith, okay? Jada Pinkett-Smith tried to pass off this scar on her forehead as alopecia areata, and I mentioned in my follicle follies that maybe I thought this was a kind of scarring alopecia instead. But it seems like she was trying to get ahead of, having to shave her head and exposing her scar by calling that an alopecia areata scar, which I think Gary Linkoff has a good video, which I'll link up here. I think I'm just going to finish up this really quickly, and I'll be right back with the finished look. Alright, see you in a bit. Alright, and this is the finished look. Pastel polka dot clown ready for Easter. And talking about alopecia areata, which presents in these, circular bald patches. Okay, so if you like this video, don't forget to give me a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Check out my other episodes of Follicle Follies where I talk about all things hair. Okay, it's a real passion of mine and I really like talking about hair and hair diseases, hair treatment, hair news, hair science, and all sorts of things like that. And yeah, I was actually preparing a whole bunch of Easter looks, so this is kind of one of them. Okay, it's starting to rain, so I think I'm gonna go and do some TikToks, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Oh yeah, and it was Trans Day of Visibility last week, so I have these pink and blue pearly polka dotty nails. Have a look. Alright, don't forget to check out my other videos. I did a couple of follicle follies the last couple of weeks, and also I did a whole series about hair. Check out this playlist. Alright, bye.